Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to hike to Apache Peak here in the San Jacinto Wilderness. You might not have heard of it. It's not a really popular hike, but it should be. It's a really cool hike. We're going to take the Spitler Peak Trail up to the PCT and then take a little use trail to come up to this really beautiful summit here. Little rocky summit where we'll get views down into the desert, Palm Springs area, San Jacinto, and then over to Saddleback Mountain on the border of Riverside and Orange County. So really cool hike. We're looking at about 11 miles, about 2,600 feet of climbing. I'll put all of the exact details, including where to get a permit, in the guide on HikingGuy.com. Now, you might be wondering why this is called Apache Peak, because if you're familiar with the area, the Apache didn't natively live around here. And it's called Apache Peak because evidently the Apache used to come all the way from where they natively lived in what's now Arizona, so a few hundred miles east of here. They would come all the way this far to raid, and they've actually found Apache artifacts here. The oral histories of the native peoples here talk about Apache raids and fighting the Apache. So really amazing to think that those guys would trek here in the, across the desert to raid all the way, almost to the Pacific Ocean, which was pretty amazing. So that's why it's called Apache Peak. But anyway, whether Apaches are here or not, it is a cool hike. I definitely recommend it, and it's definitely off the beaten path. You're not going to get crowds here. Recommend this one 100%. Now, before I dive in, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone who supports the site. I cannot do all of these guides without your help. All the gear reviews, the how-tos, the hike guides. I appreciate it 1,000%. It helps me keep everything free of sponsorships and paywalls and all of that nonsense. So thank you. And if you're liking the video, if you can give me a thumbs up, it's another easy way to say thank you. And it helps other people find the video who are maybe looking to do the hike to Apache Peak. So easy way to pass it on. All right, guys, I'm excited to show you this hike. It's a really cool one. So let's hit the trail. So from the parking area, we're just going to go up the road a short bit and find the trailhead here. Now, the parking area and the trailhead aren't really marked, but they're easy enough to find. And there's a little sign here telling you to be careful of falling trees and damage from the 2013 mountain fire. And then a sign for the San Jacinto Wilderness, which you're entering. And from here, that pointy peak in the middle, that is Apache Peak. On the left is Ansel Rock. On the right is Spitler Peak. And we're just going to start here. It's pretty level in the beginning. One of the things I like about this hike is it just sort of gradually gets steeper as you go on. And the beginning part is pretty mellow and level as we head up. There's Apache Peak right in front of us. This is the San Jacinto Wilderness. You'll see a little sign for that. If you don't know what a wilderness area is, I have a guide to wilderness areas on the website, so check that out. Here's some damage from the mountain fire of 2013, which kind of devastated this area. It was right when I moved to Southern California, actually. I had hiked this before the fire and after the fire. Now, when you climb up, we're in San Bernardino National Forest, but it definitely feels like East County, San Diego here, or even Cleveland National Forest as we start the climb on a long approach to a switchback there. In the distance is Lake Hemet, which is an artificial lake built at the dam. And there's a couple of these little viewpoints which make good stopping points if you want to have some breakfast or fuel up for the climb. That's a great place to do it. Now, at the end of this really long stretch, there's one switchback right here as we go up. And this is the only switchback on this first part of the climb. We're going to have a little break in the middle, and then we're going to have some more switchbacks in the steeper part. But you can see here, we're going to kind of come back around. There's Tequit's Peak in the distance. That's a really cool hike. There's a fire tower up there if you've not done that. I have that guide on my website as well. I'll put a link to that in the guide on the website. But really beautiful views. Now, at the end of this first part of the climb here, it's around 6,000 feet or so. We're going to go through this area of fire damage. And it actually levels out a little bit. There's some little downhill dips here. My Garmin thought this was a downhill section on the Climb Pro feature, if you're familiar with that. But it's not really. It's more of a flat section. There's a little dry stream that we cross. There is another stream coming up, which I'll show you in a second if you want some water. But it's not that long of a hike. You can bring enough water on this one. Might be easier. Here's the stream. Now this is I shot this in October, and it still has water in it, which is pretty different for Southern California here, especially when it's been so hot and such a drought year. But after you cross the stream, we're going to start the second part of the climb, which is definitely steeper than the first part. But again, there are some switchbacks and some nice views down into the canyon that we came up through. We're just going to follow these switchbacks on up until we get to the PCT. And you might notice too, the trail looks a little bit overgrown. It's not too bad. This is definitely not a popular trail. I don't think I've ever seen anybody on this trail. We can see here as we climb up, if you have a problem with plants brushing against your legs, you might want to put some pants on or longer pants here. Nice views down there to Lake Hemetz. When the dam there was built, it was the largest masonry dam in the world, which is kind of neat. If you ever saw the show Airwolf, that's where the main character's cabin was. There's some B-roll from there. As we get to the top, that peak in the distance is Spitler Peak, which is named after a squatter who squatted that place called Forbes Ranch, which is where Timothy Leary made a lot of LSD. And I'll talk about that in the guide on Hiking Guy if you're interested in the history behind this. And at the end of the climb, here we are on the PCT, and there's a nice little sign here. This is an area called the Desert Divide, which comes up from the south, from Cleveland National Forest in the south, but they call it that because on the one side you can see down into Coachella Valley, Palm Desert down there, and then on the other side where we just came up, it's called Garner Valley, but it's all green and everything. But we're just gonna enjoy the view and then head on back to the trail over here. You'll also notice that the sign says PCT alternative. That's because if you do this in the winter, somebody died here actually in 2020 right by Apache Peak. It was pretty tragic because it gets kind of steep and it can be icy and slippery. So they made an alternative route that goes back down. There's a Coachella Valley down there, Palm Desert, but the route goes back down and around and comes back up at the, I think, the Black Mountain Fire Tower area, which I also have a guide to. Now, when you're in the PCT, it's not going to be all flat. We actually have some uphill here. And I'm doing this, like I said, in October. When I do this in the spring, the trail's real easy, but by October, there's not really any northbound PCT hikers, and it gets a little overgrown as well. We're going to come up to this little false summit here, and in the distance you can see two peaks. That's Apache Peak, and on the one side here on the right we have the desert, and on the left we have area towards Saddleback Mountain, which you can see. And on a clear day, I think you can see up to Angeles National Forest. It's interesting because these peaks there's two peaks on the topographic map. Both of them Apache Peak. The one on the left is the higher one, the one we're going. Here's the junction for Apache Springs, which is right down on the right. That's where they found actually arrowheads from Apache, and they named this area after that. And here we come to the turn off for Apache Peak. Now, it's up there. This is not an official trail. It's a use trail. And you're basically going to cross this gully. The PCT will turn sharply off to your right here. And you can see it's a well-worn path, but we're going to go on the smaller use trail over here on the left and follow the gully up. And it's a little bit of a choose-your-own adventure. There's not a ton of people going up to Apache Peak, but there's definitely a trail there. We're going to aim for the right-hand side of the boulders up at the summit. As we go up, you can see there's this one boulder here, which is on the rightmost section right there. We're just going to pass that to its right and then make a hard left after it. And then we're going to be at the summit area here where you can kind of climb up. It's not too bad to walk up these boulders, not any kind of crazy scramble. But from here, you're going to get some pretty spectacular views. We can see down to Toro Peak in the distance, Rabbit Peak down there. There's a little summit register and one of the old ammo boxes. There's Lake Hemet, which we saw earlier. There's a little area to the south over there. And then if we look up to the north, we can see Tequit's Peak in San Jacinto. There's Saddleback Mountain in Orange County. And there's San Jacinto up there in the distance. To the right of that, Palm Desert, Palm Springs. And then to the south from here is the the way back. So if you want to go back the way you came, you just go back the way you came. You could also go to the other Apache Peak or even bag Spitler Peak. It'll just add about a mile on, and that's the hike. So here we are. We're just south of Idlewild Mountain Center. This is the path of the hike. It's an out and back. Here's the parking area, and if I just, while I'm up here, I can show you. There's Palm Springs, Palm Desert. Up here, San Jacinto Peak. There's San Gorgonio in the back, which I think is blocked. There's Angeles National Forest. And then over here is Catalina, Saddleback Mountain in the distance over there. And you can see a lot from the summit of Apache Peak. But let me show you the trail down here. Now, I mentioned the parkings can be a little bit tricky. You can see if I go in here, parking areas here, you just go up a little bit and then get on the trail. There's some private land over here, and it can get a little noisy actually, but it's not too bad considering there's no one else on the trail. We're going to start this long climb across the flats here. Then we have the long sort of gradual climb. This is the viewpoint I showed you earlier. And if we swing around this way, you can see Lake Hemet right over here. But anyway, we go all the way to the end, to this one switchback right here, this long switchback, and then start climbing up. We do this little turn in. This was the flat section over here. We cross that gully, and then we go out to here. We have a few little crossings here till we get to that creek where I said there's always water. And then if I zoom out, you can see the switchbacks we have on this last steep part up to the PCT. And here we are up to the PCT. From there, it's pretty straightforward. We're just going to follow this up. Here's the junction with Apache Springs. That's, again, where they found the arrowheads, allegedly. And then we turn off of the PCT onto the use trail. Let me just bring you down. Maybe we can see. I can show you from the top up a little bit better. Here we go. Here you can see the PCT continues around the side. We're going to go up this gully. Basically, you're following this gully all the way up, and then there's that boulder right down here. Let's see if I can get down to it on satellite photo. There it is. We're going to go to the right of the boulder and then climb up to the summit area right here. Now, I mentioned on the way back, you can bag some more peaks if you want. This is a double peak. If you look at a topographic map for this area, these are both named Apache Peak, which is kind of unique. I don't know if I've ever seen that, or maybe I saw it once or twice, but you don't see it a lot. Let me put it that way. On the back, if you want to bag Spitler Peak, it's actually pretty easy. I didn't include it here because the use trail to the top is not as good, not as easy as the Apache Peak, and I don't think it's as pretty as that. But if you want to, it's just right down here. You just go up the PCT, and then you take, let me see if I can get it a little bit better here. You take a use trail up to the top, but again, you don't have to. You can if you want, but you basically just go up and then come back down and then continue back down the way you came. And that's the hike. And if you want to do some other hikes here in the San Bernardino National Forest, I have a bunch of them on the website. And if you don't know what a wilderness area is, I recommend watching my video on what wilderness areas are, because it's pretty interesting, especially if you're spending some time outdoors. All right, guys, I'll see you out on the trails.